Coming to you from the mobile Hudson Media Group studio, right here in the Uribe compound, this is Talking Politics, and I am New Jersey's premier journalist, top 100 Latino via the Latino Spirit Online magazine for 2020, 2021, and now in 2022, and certainly the sworn enemy of all the latte liberals, clueless progressives, social justice clowns, and the woke fools all throughout Hudson County and, of course, throughout the state of New Jersey. Yes, it's me, Fernando Uribe, standing up against all of them each and every day. There is a lot to discuss, so let's get started. Here's what I'm thinking about right now. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've been reading your news feeds, whether it be on social media, either on email, or just watching cable news on a nightly basis, certainly voting rights and just the concept of voting itself is under considerable debate. Now, of course, those on the left are having sort of a meltdown because certainly this week in the United States Senate, Democrats who barely control the United States Senate, but just sort of a 50-50, vote. But again, the tiebreaker is Vice President Kamala, whatever her name is, Harris. And of course, they didn't get the votes they needed to sort of overhaul voting rights, right? In the name of John Lewis. Everybody remember John Lewis? That, forgettable congressman who served in, the House of Representatives forever, and his district absolutely went to, what, but nobody remembers that about John Lewis, but they just want to sort of put out this, piece of legislation to pander and put it in his honor. But we all know what John Lewis represented, folks, in terms of ineptitude and incompetence in the House of Representatives. But let me not just sort of go there. Certainly Democrats didn't have the votes this week with two U.S. senators, one out of Arizona and one out of West Virginia, standing with Republicans. And of course, those on the right certainly want to make sure that elections are fair and that they're honest. It's not about people on the right like myself want to make it harder for people to vote. No, that's not the case at all, despite what many on the left want to tell you. No, folks, I just want it to be harder for people to cheat. So, wanting some transparency, some legitimacy, and some accuracy in voting isn't the end of the world. But you wouldn't know that if you listen to those on the left, who again get perpetually erect when it comes to talking about, voting rights and how there's so much on the side of people of color and minorities. No, they're not, folks. Don't get fooled by that rhetoric. But in any event, it got me thinking about voting. And, when it comes to sort of the hot button issue is about photo ID and whether or not it's, racist or not racist when it comes to voting. So I looked at a list that I recently came across, and let me just discuss some things that apparently are not racist when requiring an ID. So bear with me here, folks. For example, go to gamble at a casino. You have to verify your age. Therefore, you have to provide an ID. You have, for example, to go buy a cell phone. For those of us like myself that like an iPhone, right? That's great when you go to an Apple store or a T-Mobile vendor, AT&T or Verizon, or I don't know, whatever other, cell phone companies are out there. Yes, when you want to go purchase a cell phone or lease one, you need to provide an ID, right? Now, for those of you that have a flip phone, right, an Android or whatever, yeah, you still have to provide an ID anyway. When you apply for a hunting and or fishing license, when you rent a hotel room, for all you guys out there, and sometimes you ladies, maybe you want to take your side piece out, and you want to hide somewhere, make sure your significant other or your spouse doesn't catch you. Well, yeah, if you want to go and, take care of business in a hotel room, well, you can't go do that without presenting an ID. For example, adopting a pet, right? A lot of you out there are big dog lovers and cat lovers. I'm not. I can't stand pets. It's probably the most unnecessary expense I can think of, at least on a daily basis. But again, for those of you that love animals, God bless your hearts. Go walk your dog and pick up, dog feces when it's 10 degrees like it was last weekend. Good luck with that. But in any event, when you want to go adopt a pet, you need to provide an ID. Oh, here's one. How about purchasing a firearm? When you want to practice your Second Amendment right. Well, it's interesting when people talk about, voting's a right, you shouldn't limit it. Asking for an ID is racist or it's wrong or it's punitive. Well, no one says anything about going to purchase a handgun, and that's practicing your Second Amendment right. Right to bear arms. Anybody remember that when you read the Constitution? Yeah, well, no one seems to have a problem with presenting an ID to go exercise your Second Amendment rights. If anything, don't you want to make sure that, you know who's buying a firearm and that the person who is buying a firearm says who they are on that ID and that they say who they are? I mean, doesn't that matter to you? Well, yeah, right? And that's practicing a right, isn't it? Well, there you go. For example, go to get married. for those of you who want to take the plunge, whether it's regular couples or same-sex couples, hey, whether it's City Hall or whether it's, I don't know, maybe having someone, an ordained minister or a pastor come to, perform the ceremony in, I don't know, your backyard or in some, I don't know, catering hall. Well, guess what? You're gonna have to provide an ID for that. Okay. Oh, how about this? How about getting on an airplane? Yes, maybe we're not traveling as much because of COVID, but pre-COVID, people love to travel. I mean, I love to travel, whether it's domestically or internationally. Yeah, you need to provide an ID. I know, folks, you're all going to be saying, oh, Fernando, but these aren't rights. Bear with me here. I just talked about one before when it came to purchasing a firearm. How about buying a car or renting a car? How about applying for a mortgage? These are all things, ladies and gentlemen, that you need to verify who you are to be able to do that, whether it's buying a new car, leasing a car, or buying a used vehicle. How about maybe, applying for a mortgage? Isn't that the American dream, right? Oh, buying a house, the white picket fence, the driveway, right? The car in the driveway. Isn't that all the concept of the American dream? Why is the left want to impugn on that, right? Is that something that people want to aspire to, regardless of ethnicity or backgrounds, right? Oh, how about this? How about buying a house or renting a house? Okay, you need to provide an ID. How about applying for a job, whether it's in civil service, whether it's in the private sector, or even applying for Social Security? Okay, whether it's done at birth, right, when parents have a child and they want to make sure that the child has a Social Security number, well, guess what? You need to provide an ID, some sort of verification of who you are. No, obviously an infant's not going to have an ID, but maybe a birth certificate, something that verifies their identity. How about applying for Medicaid, right? Plenty of people in Hudson County, right? They depend on Medicaid. Well, don't you need an ID to go apply for Medicaid? Right? Because, if we deny Medicaid, that's also punitive, isn't it? Don't we hear everybody on the left talking about, oh, we need to make, have more resources available for people of color and working poor. Well, I'm sorry. If you go apply for Medicaid or any other social service, don't you need an ID? Well, how come, Democrats or the far left in the party don't bitch and moan about that? Or, for example, also applying for public assistance. Right? There's a good portion of the left that, some live on public assistance, right? Isn't that maybe the stereotype, but isn't that also partially true? How come no one's calling out that practice, right? When you go apply for public assistance, right? Oh, well, you need an ID. You need to verify who you are. They just can't bestow public assistance to just anyone. You need to verify your identity, right? Or even opening a bank account. Like, these are important things that we do, ladies and gentlemen, as we're going through adolescence and maybe also into adulthood, right? Opening a bank account, opening a checking account, a savings account, maybe opening an IRA, thinking about retirement. Maybe, maybe you want to buy a savings bond. Maybe you want to put money into a CD, right? Maybe you just had a child and you want to put some money away for their college fund. Well, you can't do that without an ID, and for those on the left, right, especially, those, wonderful people, right, that love to march for equality and all that stuff. Well, a lot of them love to buy cigarettes and alcohol. Well, guess what? You can't do that without an ID. So, and I know, of course, and folks, none of these things that I just listed for you are racist when you ask for a photo ID. But here's a list of the things that requiring a photo ID is deemed to be racist. All right, you ready? Here's the list. Voting, and that's it. Do you see the madness here, folks? And I'm sure you want to go on and talk to me about, oh, well, it's, that's a fundamental right that our ancestors fought for and that's written into the Constitution. Absolutely. No one's trying to deny anybody the right to vote. Okay? But requiring a photo ID isn't racist. Okay? Because I know a lot of people that can go their entire lives without voting. Yes, it's a right. But the list I gave you of the other activities, can you go your entire life without doing any of those things? I highly doubt it, unless you're a bum, unless you're homeless, unless you're a vagabond, or unless you're a traveling gypsy or something. I don't know. But the activities I just listed for you, guess what? To do any of them, you need an ID. But it's not racist when you ask for one. But somehow, when asking for one, when it comes to voting, it is. Folks, this is where the left just loses me, okay? If a lot of Democrat-controlled legislatures in states like New Jersey, New York, and other blue states want to talk about, oh, how racist it is. Well, not everybody can afford an ID. Well, you love to spend money unnecessarily anyway, right? Don't you coddle illegals by spending money on programs for illegals? Well, what's one more program to implement via legislation? Why don't you just issue a state ID to every single person and have it paid with taxpayer dollars? That would solve the problem. But you know why they won't do that, folks? Because it takes away their martyrism. It takes away the perpetual victimhood that the left lives on. And of course, if they didn't have that, I'm sure they'd find something else to bitch and moan about because that's what they live for. Like, they live to bitch and they bitch to live. That's pretty much the left, ladies and gentlemen, in the most succinct, concise manner. But again, when we're talking about photo ID, what's the big deal? I just listed everything for you and I just gave you a clear-cut argument. But folks, there are those on the left that will say, oh, well, it's racist and you're targeting minorities. No, we're not, folks. I, for one, don't want to make it harder for people to vote. I want to make it harder for people to cheat. We all know it happens, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, let's stop kidding ourselves. And the sooner we come to that reality, I think the more honest conversation we can have about voting when it's all said and done. And that's what I'm thinking about right now. In the latest edition of the 5-time award-winning podcast, Talking the Hudson, which you can listen to every single week via www.blogtalkradio.com/talkingthehudson, was a regular on the program. He's the founder and editor of the Jersey City Times, Aaron Morrill. By the way, you can check out all the excellent journalism they provide on a daily basis by going to their website, www.jcitytimes.com. Now, we spoke for over an hour on a variety of different topics, and here are some highlights for your consideration. First and foremost, we talked about arguably the biggest story breaking at the beginning of 2022, and that was the sudden retirement of U.S. Representative Albio Sires right here in the 8th Congressional District in Hudson County. Subsequently, the son of U.S. Senator Robert Menendez Jr., is now apparently the heir apparent to that seat as he announced his candidacy earlier this month and will be running in the primary coming up in June. Aaron had a lot to say about Robert Menendez Jr.'s candidacy and sort of the optics involving what Albio Sires' retirement meant and what it means for that seat for the immediate future. Let's check out what Aaron had to say.
Aaron, arguably the biggest news story over the holiday season and right at the beginning of the new year was the imminent retirement of U.S. Representative Albio Sires, representing us here in the 8th Congressional District. And certainly the biggest news was that he was not going to seek another term. He was very transparent about it. I think, I think that's the Cuban in him, which I respect because I'm Cuban too, of just sort of being like very blunt about it, where, he kind of sees the tea leaves. He foresees a Republican House coming, hopefully, this November, so I don't have to look at Nancy Pelosi anymore as Speaker. But he was very blunt about it. He has no desire to serve in a Republican House. He felt this year was his last year. He will not run again. And soon enough, as he announced his retirement, he immediately bestowed his support for the son of U.S. Senator Robert Menendez. Coincidentally, Robert Menendez Jr. Will be the candidate, apparently, for the Democratic Party, at least one of the announced ones, I guess the one that got the most endorsements. Sure enough, as soon as Albio endorsed him, it was sort of a domino effect. The ACDO supported him. I'm sure Stephen Fulop had to bite his tongue and show support for Robert Jr., as well as State Senator Sacco, along with that power, the brokers, as they say. That was the biggest news story there, and it's created quite a debate. I know you published an editorial from Terrence McDonald from the New Jersey Monitor, Hudson County guy for some years with the Journal. Your thoughts on what Robert Jr.'s candidacy means?
Yeah, it's a really interesting story, and Terrence's editorial did really well, got a lot of views. People were very interested in it and in the story generally. I think, I am not plugged into Albio Sires' network, so I didn't see it coming. I didn't know that was going to happen, although he had been, obviously he had been congressman for a while, and it was clear that Bob Sr. was grooming Bob, Jr. To do something. I guess he had been appointed to the board of the Port Authority, and everybody was talking about what is he going to run for? What's he going to do? I didn't necessarily see this coming. I don't know if anybody else did, but it makes perfect sense now that it's happened. I think for a lot of people it is emblematic, though, of the machine that we have in Hudson County sort of running roughshod over what people normally think of as representative democracy, and of a democracy that where people can throw their hats in the ring and have a chance to run for an office like the House, like representative, like congressman.
Secondly, we discussed the ongoing debate as it pertains to the redistricting of wards in Jersey City. Without a doubt, everyone has an opinion on social media and, of course, on all the local journalistic outlets. The Jersey City Times was no exception. Let's hear what Aaron had to say about the possible controversy regarding the redistricting of wards in Jersey City.
Let's get a little local here also in Jersey City. Aaron, another good piece in the Times a couple of days ago. Ron Lear, one of your contributors, talking about just seems like this redistricting of Jersey City and the wards. It has caused a lot of debate. What can you share with our audience? What's at the heart of the matter? What's true? What's not true? Let's separate fact from fiction here.
Well, I can't claim to be an expert. I'm playing catch up on this issue, like a lot of people. But clearly, there is an issue of dilution of the black vote, and that is, I think that is one of the major concerns. I have not looked at the numbers. I have not analyzed it carefully. Certainly the shape of the wards is pretty odd. If you look at the map, it looks like a gerrymandered, at least Ward D looks, I'm looking at it right now because I knew this was going to come up, and I'm trying to figure out what the rationale for it is. Here's what I'd say. I mean, here's what I know, and I'm not going to go out on a limb here because I need to get up to speed on this. What I know is that this came very quickly into people's consciousness when the meeting was set up with a week to go before the deadline to finalize this. And then the meeting turned into a debacle because they hadn't booked enough. There wasn't enough room, and they couldn't make the Zoom call work. And, just complete incompetence, it seemed. And added to that, I'm not aware that there has been any kind of explanation for the way the proposed lines have been drawn. So at this point, it's to my understanding is that people are pretty much in the dark as to why these wards have been drawn the way they've been drawn, and they feel like this was foisted on them at the last minute, and people being, skeptical by nature, I think are assuming that there is, that there's an ulterior motive to some of these lines. But I wish I could give you more on this. We're gonna learn more on Saturday. When there's another meeting on this, hopefully that will actually answer some of these questions.
It was a very interesting interview, as always, with Aaron Morrill, the founder and editor of the Jersey City Times. And you can listen to the episode in its entirety once again by going to www.blogtalkradio.com/talkonthehudson. You can download the episode and listen to it anywhere, anytime from any PC, Mac, smartphone, or tablet. And as always, these are the exclusives I'll continue to bring you every single week on Blog Talk Radio as we approach the 5-year anniversary of the debut of Talking the Hudson coming up on March the 1st. And now some local stories for your consideration. Let's start off in North Bergen, where once again, ladies and gentlemen, I feel the need to come to the defense of HUD-Post. And yes, last weekend, certainly my monologue on HUD-Post and as it pertains to their brand of journalism, their outstanding brand of journalism, by the way, got a lot of clicks and views, but that wasn't the purpose, folks. It was to stand up for what was right. And that's something that I do on this show every single week since its debut in April of 2019. And of course, I had to opine because over the week, certainly HUD-Post continues to publish breaking news when it comes to traffic jams, accidents, or anything else. And it got me thinking about the fact that in the latest traffic accident that was documented by HUD-Post, right, it was submitted to their website, It happened on the Pulaski Skyway. So, of course, it just reminds me, ladies and gentlemen, about the amount of atrocious drivers living among us, right? It seems like people aren't content getting from point A to point B in sort of a, I don't know, slow or time-appropriate manner. Everyone needs to be rushing, and that's why you see all these accidents, right? So, of course, for whatever reason, whether it's a car that's flipped on some street in Guttenberg or people just not knowing how to drive, well, good for HUD Post highlighting these things, especially on the drive home when a lot of people take the Pulaski Skyway back to their residences after leaving Essex County or maybe going in the other direction, whatever the case may be. Guess what, folks? When you don't drive responsibly and when you have to rush everywhere, you don't take your time, those things are going to happen. Okay? Sorry if it sounds punitive. Sorry if it sounds harsh. Sorry if it sounds mean-spirited. But folks, I'm not here to hold your hand. I'm not here to coddle you. Okay? I'm not here to breastfeed you. Okay? I'm here to tell you the truth because you're all adults. But of course, when you decide to do that on HUD Post, what happens? In many instances, you have all the local hood rats that look to opine. They can barely formulate a complete coherent sentence, much less get their point across without hurling insults. And of course, if that's the vitriol that I have to get for expressing an opinion that's factual, that's true, that's accurate, well then so be it. I don't mind the vitriol. I don't mind the traffic coming my way. I really don't. But at the same time, folks, do me a favor. For all the drivers out there, take it easy. Make sure you leave the house, a little earlier. Make sure you take your time getting to where you have to get to. Stop rushing everywhere. Because when you do that, guess what happens? You're more inclined to get into an accident. And guess what's going to happen even further? You're going to inconvenience everyone on their drive home who just want to get back to their families, eat dinner, watch TV, go to school online, whatever the case may be. It's that lack of consideration that makes it a nuisance for everybody else. So to all the drivers out there in Hudson County, get it together, folks. Drive a little safer. Get off your cell phones, okay? Stop texting and driving, okay? And here's the even better one. I love all the comments that come from all of these private pages on HUD Post, right? Like with 0 posts, with 10 followers. I mean, we all know these are probably a bunch of local HUD rats that probably just have up these fake pages to do what, I don't know, stalk their exes or who knows. But the point is that all their comments are funny, but it just shows how easily triggered they are when someone like me can just sort of go out there and convey truth each and every week. Again, nice job by HUD Post highlighting these accidents, making sure that people maybe take an alternate route home and don't get stuck in traffic when they're trying to get somewhere, whether it's at the end of the workday or at the beginning of their workday. And now let's move to Union City, and a special thank you to John Hines with the Hudson County Review for his report on this story. Certainly, I have to send a shout out to the Union City Board of Education for being so proactive and making sure that they were able to send out 15,000 rapid tests to students as they returned from the MLK holiday break. And I can't say enough about Justin Mercado, certainly the superintendent of schools in Union City, for their due diligence in making sure that all of their students in the school district were able to get tested when sometimes rapid tests aren't easily available. So here's some details, folks, to sort of give you a little more understanding of why this story is so significant. Now, the district, of course, was remote for the beginning parts of January, and they were asking their parents, ultimately, to test their children earlier last weekend and earlier this week to make sure that when they returned from the MLK break this past Tuesday, that students indeed would be healthy enough to return. Now, kits were distributed at each of the schools and delivered to homes, once again, throughout the MLK holiday weekend. And while encouraged, obviously, they were not required to return to the classroom. Certainly, again, and this is a statement from the superintendent of schools, Sylvia Abado, and this week, quote, "We continue to be proactive in protecting the health of our students and all school employees, as well as the entire community in Union City. We still recommend that everyone receive a vaccination and a booster shot. Testing our students and staff prior to reopening adds an additional layer of protection for everyone." Certainly, the superintendent thanked Union City Mayor and State Senator Brian Stack, along with the business administrator Anthony Dragona, along with Board Secretary and Facilities Director Justin Mercado, for collaborating in obtaining all of these kits. It wasn't an easy task, folks. It was actually quite laborious and time intensive, but you can tell how committed everyone is at the Union City Board of Education to make sure that students and teachers can return to the classroom in a safe and healthy manner. Now, again, the mayor mentioned this week, quote, "We're proud of the symbiotic relationship between the city and the school district that enhances the quality of life for all of our Union City residents. My thanks to Superintendent Abato and her staff for continuously striving to keep our children safe. Again, that was a statement by Union City Mayor and State Senator Brian Stack. Folks, I can't say enough about that due diligence. Certainly, we saw it in the town of West New York, but as always, the Union City School District leading the way in making sure that their kids, their teachers, and all the staff can get back to work in a safe and healthy manner. So I can't say enough. Shout out to them for all their hard work. Hey, all the praise to them for making sure that this got done over the holiday break. Lastly, let's move to the mile square city of Hoboken. And once again, a special thank you to John Hines with the Hudson County View for his report on this story. Now, according to ELEC, a pro-Hoboken school referendum group has raised $8,500, while the no groups have not filed anything yet. Now, the Friends of the New Hoboken High School, a group that's in favor of the $241 million school referendum, has raised approximately $8,500 with $2,999 cash on hand, while groups who are opposing the measure have not yet filed, according to state records. Now, again, let me just give you some more details here, which makes the story significant. Now, according to NJ ELEC regulations, joint committees must file if they raise more than $3,200, with a committee needing to report a contribution or expenditure in excess of $1,900 within the 48-hour reporting period. Now, FNHHS is chaired by Antonio Grana, a local parent who also serves on the zoning board. Not a surprise. And lists Laura Block as their treasurer, according to a committee filing with the New Jersey Election Law Enforcement Commission earlier this week. Now, again, some other details here. Now, Jim Coaches of the Burgess Group was the largest donor by far, contributing $4,000 on January the 14th, according to a separate campaign finance filing from the same day. Now, 3 family members of the Board of Education President Sharon Angley combined to chip in $500, no surprise there either, along with Councilwoman at Large Emily Jabor, who also contributed $1,000, not a surprise there, with Matthew Shoemaker, the husband of trustee Aileen McGurk, no surprise there either, donating $2,000. Yet another January 14th disclosure form was made available this week. Now, the largest expenditure was to Connecticut-based Mission Control, who received $5,493 for the printing and postage for direct mails that went out on January the 13th. They were also utilized by Mayor Ravi Bala and his team last year. No coincidence there about that printing company being able to get business in the mile square city of Hoboken. Folks, I've talked about this incessantly, and while a new high school I think is necessary in Hoboken, it's not a great building. It's a little old when you walk through the hallways, but $241 million is a lot of money, okay? You could probably do without the swimming pool. All right, you can deal with one theater. You can fund certain departments, okay? But $241 million, I mean, there are some buildings in Hudson County, well, mind you, we're being overdeveloped enough as it is, that aren't even costing that much. So I would hope that parents who care about what's going on in Hoboken, and I get it, folks, there's a lot of, those typical latte sipping people, woke people in Hoboken, right, that send their kids to charter schools. They may not care about this, but for other Hoboken residents, this is important. Your property taxes are going to go up with this new high school, whether you realize it or not. And I mentioned in a previous story, for elderly residents, an increase of only $500 might not seem like a lot to you, but it might seem crippling financially to some elderly residents in Hoboken. So let's be a little more fiscally responsible about what this school is going to cost. There's no doubt Hoboken, needs a new high school, but let's be a little more commonsensical. Let's just not spend for the sake of spending. I know a lot of people, obviously on the left, they don't understand economics, right? So, those are some of the people maybe that serve on the Hoboken City Council. But for residents in Hoboken, they care about where their money goes and how much of it is spent. I don't think this is such a great idea at that price tag, but what do I know? I'm just a PhD who just happens to excel in opinion journalism. But regardless, folks, this is a story I'll definitely keep you, informed about in the coming days as the referendum vote is quickly approaching. And that's our show for this week. To check out all the excellent programming brought to you by the leader in independent media right here in Hudson County, the Hudson Media Group, please go to their websites, www.hmgtvshows.com, as well as www.livestream.com/hmgtv, and also check out the Hudson Media Group on their YouTube page. Make sure you like them on Facebook and follow them on both Instagram and Twitter. Always remember that every single week via Blog Talk Radio, The 5-time award-winning podcast, Talking the Hudson, brings you the most exclusive guests that no other media outlet is bringing you in Hudson County, and I'm proud to do that every single week via www.blogtalkradio.com/talkingthehudson. You can download the episodes and listen to them anywhere and anytime from any PC, Mac, smartphone, or tablet. Make sure you follow Talking the Hudson on Instagram, as well as my own Instagram, at Professor Fernando Uribe. Also, make sure you follow this show, Talking Politics, with Fernando Uribe on Instagram as well. And also hit me up on Twitter whenever you can, at NoFilterUribe. And certainly, folks, make sure you also like Talking Politics with Fernando Uribe, also on Facebook. And always remember, ladies and gentlemen, if it's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid, it is always Talking Politics right here with the Hudson Media Group. I am New Jersey's premier journalist, Top 100 Latino via the Latino Spirit Online magazine for 2020, 2021, and now in 2022, as well as the sworn enemy of all the latte liberals, clueless progressives, social justice clowns, and woke fools all throughout Hudson County and the state of New Jersey. Yes, it's me, Fernando Uribe, saying so long, and as always, thank you so much for watching.
Don't forget to catch Fernando's podcast at blogtalkradio.com/talkonthehudson. New episodes available every Wednesday night at 9 p.m.